Good morning. I have had an early session today, which was lovely, and we spent it in terrific Bark Park, which is up in Chorley Wood. It's a field that you can hire out. There's some great stuff there. There's agility equipment, there's massive tires, there's a wooded bit, there's a little hut that you can sit in and work on relaxing while sitting in a restaurant, you can pretend. So I use this field every so often when I want to work on recall, but also for this client. Actually, I've been working with them for a while, and we have been so they called me in because Ricky is a Romanian street dog. He'd come over, and with really good intentions, the client had been taking him out and about in different places, trying to get him used to new things, which is really common because we want them to feel comfortable. But what can happen is we can flood them, and they can then start, and some dogs can cope with flooding, but actually what was happening with Ricky is that because he was so fueled and overwhelmed by everything, he would go into predatory mode, which meant that he would be constantly on the lookout for squirrels or a kind of fix of chasing something. So would barely put his nose down on the floor. He'd just be on the lookout for cats on the road and squirrels in the woods and people and dogs. So he spent a lot of time in that state. So when they were first letting him off, which he was okay with recall, but I wouldn't say he's as good as he is now, so he's doing a great job. What could happen is because he'd be already sort of revved up and been chasing, and the owners were doing great, but what they were doing was fueling this by encouraging the chasing and getting excited by finding stuff and throwing a stick or getting that arousal up. He would then end up, if there was a person that suddenly come out in the woods or a dog, he would literally run over to them, and with the people he would just jump up. But he's really tall and big, so he's like white and tan. I'll show a picture in the comments, but he is probably Doberman height. So obviously that running towards you in the woods is quite a bit scary, I'd say. But also what he'd do is if he saw other dogs, he'd just go into like a predatory stalking. So he would drop down and fixate and then just go in really stealth-like, which ends up with them launching, well, it ended up with him launching very quickly at the dogs and making the dogs and the owners very uncomfortable. And it started to appear aggressive because he would show a sound very aggressive, but lucky enough hadn't made contact. So we took it back to basics. When I first met him, we were going back out on normal sniffy walks and just trying to get him to sniff on the journey, not just the destination. And then what we would do is we would start to work on him just observing dogs from a distance and then disengaging, because also when Ricky got frustrated, he would also lunge and jump at the owner and sort of get mouthy and bitey if he got frustrated. So what I also taught him was a hand target when he didn't feel comfortable, but also that formed the basis of his recall. So rather than him mouthing, sometimes he does a little bit of mouthing, but nothing like he used to. He would just come and target our hand, and then we can move away, or we'd recall him away. So he has been able to sniff and relax and be comfortable around dogs. He was playing with a Labrador the other day. He's much better with that. But when I last went out with him, I was meeting them in Black Park, and I've met them there before, but actually he seemed really off. So he was, as I was walking down to him, he spotted me and veered off as if he wanted to avoid me, which it has been common in the past with him. So he doesn't want conflict. He doesn't really want to jump all over people either, but because he doesn't know how else to handle it, that would be his gut, that would be how he would react. But actually this time he was really avoiding, and then I noticed him see someone else as I was walking up to them, and he kept sort of veering off and his tail was down. He was very vigilant. So we don't know what triggered it, but what we did realize is when we went into the woods and then he started sort of squirrel chasing, because there were squirrels there, his mood state changed. Now we want to replicate that, but not by him chasing squirrels and things. So we wanted to change how his emotional state was when he was feeling uncomfortable. So normally when they're in that state, I'll get them out by either sniffing and searching for treats, or lucky enough we were able to do a little bit of back and forth recall to help him just get back into not being so worried. We don't know what triggered it, whether it was the people coming down or whether it was the sound, we don't know. But what it made me think was I need to take him to somewhere where he's never been before, because we've been sticking to some sort of normal routes, because I wanted to help dissipate some of his arousal. So we ended up at Terrific Bark Park today. He went in and he looked like he wanted to come out as soon as he got in there, which he didn't panic, to be honest. So he was very intrigued. He went over to the things that were unfamiliar. Some things he avoided completely, like a flower. So he was really cautious about this grey pink flower that was in there, but actually when he went over to like things like the big massive tractor tires, he was absolutely fine. He was happy in the wooded area bit. He was really uncomfortable in the hut, but he wasn't that worried that I needed to leave. So what I wanted him to do was start to explore, but what he kept doing was looking like he wanted to go in the woods, but for me it was because he wanted to squirrel chase, because that's what he feels better, he felt more comfortable with. So once we started exploring the space, we started walking slower. He started putting his nose down and started sniffing, and then by the third loop he was really exploring the whole place. Whereas what could have happened is we'd think, oh, he doesn't like it here, let's go, and then take him to that place where he's going to get that fixed. But what I wanted to do is, because they're going away soon, is I wanted to get him to, because they're going away and staying in like a lodge, I needed to help him feel comfortable with taking in new things and helping the owner let him explore and slow his pace down. So we walked around a few times. We sat in the cabin. The cabin was a little bit much for him. He was already nervous in there because it's enclosed. He felt a bit trapped. So he'd explore things, but his back legs would still be outside the cabin. So he was like, I'm not going in. And then we sat in there for a little bit, but he just kept jumping up at me, which was an indication that he wanted out. So we went out, and then we just slowly walked and chatted. We'd done a little bit of recall, and his recall, compared to before, his recall was spot on. He came back to the owner every time, even when I was distracting him, which is unusual for him. So a massive improvement. So come back every time in that scenario. But he was really, the one noise that really bothered him there was kites that were flying above us. So the birds were flying overhead, and they make, if anyone has heard them before, they make like a whistling sound. He was finding that like, he just, every time they made the noise, he'd just stand like, what's that? But not panicked, but like very intrigued. So we started pairing the noise equals treats go on the floor, and then after the first 3 or 4 times the kites were whistling, he was absolutely fine. So some dogs can't recover as well as Ricky, but he's been recovering much quicker than before. As I said, we're always managing his excitement levels, because he can go from 0 to 60 very quickly, and we don't need that energy when we're outside. We definitely need it for recall, I have to say. So that's the one caveat. I often want a quick recall where they love coming back to the owners, but we don't need to fuel it anymore, because for him, I really need him to explore and process new situations. So sadly it's our last session, so although he's doing great, so I just wanted to see where he was with new environments, and actually he still took it in his stride really well, and he recovered quickly. We might see each other in a few months time, but his progress is excelled so quickly that the owner's comfortable about taking the next steps on their own, but I'm still supporting them via messages. But they were so kind. They fed me what I love, and that is I'm a chocoholic. So I was so lovely. It was so nice to meet them, and you know, such a shame we can't hug right now in this environment, especially as I have a cough, but it's not a COVID cough. I wasn't trying to demonstrate it there. I've got a bit of a cough at the moment, but yeah, so I didn't want to risk anything anyway with masks or not, so we decided not to hug. But she's going to keep me posted, and as I said, I'm going to be there for support as and when they need them just going forward a little bit, as she's out on her own now. So what I wanted to do is just share that with you. So it's just sort of my morning session today. So my next 2 sessions, I've got a puppy, so we're going to go out and work on a little bit of lead walking, and just being responsive when there's distractions around. And I've also got another older dog where she can be she finds it uncomfortable, or she doesn't know quite how to react to other dogs, which ends up with her snarling at them, and sort of lunging, but she doesn't know how else to handle it. She wants to engage with them, but she handles it in the wrong way. So firstly, again, she's another dog that went out very hyper vigilant. She didn't really sniff on the walk. She was very regimental with training, so she was constantly working on a little bit of lead walking, but actually we just want to try and encourage her to sniff and sort of process the environment again. So you know, I talk about it all the time. If I go to a client and see that the dog's not sniffing and meandering, what I'm looking at is what's going on emotionally. Are they hyper vigilant and now finding everything in their environment something that they want to walk past quickly, or are they finding it really difficult? So for her, we're just trying to slow things down and help her observe and not feel the need to run up to every dog. We want her to learn that actually you can just ignore dogs if you want to, so that she feels comfortable. Because there are times that once she's had the sort of growl and snap and whatever she does, which obviously the average owner is not going to allow that to happen to their dog, she actually plays fine with the dogs. It's that just initial greeting where she's a little bit unsure. So we're going to work a little bit more on that. Anyway, I hope you all have a good day. This video went on longer than I expected, but you know, I like to babble on. So I will speak to you all soon. Take care. Bye.